So today we're going to be looking at solving and graphing inequalities. So we're going to look at a few examples to go with those. Okay, so make sure if you have any questions about these or you think I'm going too fast, hit pause, ask a question, do whatever you need to do. Okay, so looking at number 1, I have 7x minus 3x plus 6 is greater than 5x minus 8. So the first thing to notice that this is going to be an open dot, okay, because it is just a greater than symbol. So I need to go ahead and solve my inequality for my x, for my variable. So to do that, I see that there's a minus sign in front of the parentheses, so I'm going to write in a -1. Since I have a -1 right in front of the parentheses, that's what I'm going to distribute to everything. So then I'll have 7x, -1 times 3 gives me minus 3x, -1 times 6 gives me minus 6, is greater than 5x minus 8. From here, I'm still solving for my variables, so I'm going to combine some like terms on the left. 7x minus 3x gives me 4x minus 6. It's still greater than 5x minus 8. Now I'm going to move all my variables to the left side of the equal sign. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. Those will cancel, which is great. That's what we want. 4x minus 5x gives me -1x minus 6 is greater than, the only thing we had left was a -8. Now remember, if you only want to write it as -x, that is totally fine. It means the same thing. So from there, I'm going to add the 6 to both sides. The 6's cancel out, which is good. So then I have -1x is greater than -8 plus 6 gives me a -2. The last step I have is I need to get rid of that -1. Now, whenever I'm dividing by a negative number, remember this is where our golden rule of inequalities comes into play. So this division right here. Okay, so whenever that happens, now I have x is less than. -2 divided by -1 gives me a +2. So notice how my inequality flipped when I divided by that negative number. So now I can graph this. The 2 goes in the middle. I need 2 numbers that are bigger and 2 numbers that are smaller. We already talked about it being an open dot, so don't forget that. It's an open dot. And I want all the x's that are less than 2. Well, I know 0 is less than 2, so I'm going to shade where the 0 is. All right. So looking at number 2, I want you to look at number 2 and I want you to describe the error and correctly solve the following inequality. So look at that problem and tell me, what did I do wrong? Okay, and how should I correctly solve it? All right, so if I'm looking at that, okay, I have 8x minus 5 is less than x minus 2. So this person moved the numbers first, which is okay. But whenever they added 5 to both sides, they did not get a 3 like they were supposed to. They got -7. So this person forgot to use their inverse operations because it looks like they subtracted 5 from both sides. So what did they do wrong? Okay, they didn't use inverse operations. So if I want to correctly solve this, okay, once I've added 5 to both sides, those cancel out, and then I'm going to correctly solve it on the left. Anytime you get a question like this on a test or a quiz, because we do a lot of error analysis, please make sure you're actually working out the problem on, don't just try and correct it on, the paper. Okay, so we added 5 to both sides. You'll get 8x is less than or equal to x. -2 plus 5 gives me +3. We're going to subtract x from both sides. 8x minus an x gives me 7x is less than or equal to 3. Divide out the 7, and I'll get x is less than or equal to 3/7. So that's going to be my final answer. Remember, it's okay to get a fraction. Fractions are numbers too. All right, looking at number 3. It says, given the following inequality, negative 8x plus 14 is greater than or equal to 2 minus 4x. Determine, I don't know where that 4 came from, ignore that. Determine if negative 2 is a solution. Show all work and explain your answer. So, you have two ways to do this. The first way is like we did in that warm-up a while ago, is I'm going to take that negative 2 and substitute it in for the x. So when I do that, I'll get negative 8 times the negative 2 plus 14 is greater than or equal to 2 minus 4 times the negative 2. And then I'm just going to simplify both sides. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. Negative 8 times the negative 2 gives me positive 16 plus 14. Remember, you can put all of that into your calculator. Is greater than or equal to 2. Negative 4 times the negative 2 gives me plus 8. I'm going to keep simplifying. So I'll get 16 plus 14 gives me 30. Is greater than or equal to 2 plus 8 gives me 10. So I want to know if negative 2 is a solution. Well, I plugged it in, and then I got 30 is greater than or equal to 10. This is true. Since it is true, that means yes, it is a solution. If you had gotten something that was false, it would have been it would not have been a solution. So yes, it is a solution. Your other option would have been to solve for your variable, get x all by itself, and then plug in the negative 2 for the x. I think this way is a little bit easier just because you're going to have to substitute it in anyway, so you might as well do it at the beginning. All right, so yes, it is a solution. Now, if it had been 30 is less than or equal to 10, that definitely would have been false. Okay, so that would have been a non-solution. All right, flip your page over to the back. We've got one more problem. So it says 4, select all the following that have the same solution. So we need to solve these and figure out which ones have the same solution. So the first one you're given is negative 6b is less than negative 24. So for this one, I'm going to divide both sides by the negative 6. The 6's cancel out, and I'll get b is now, remember we're dividing by a negative number, so my inequality flips. Okay, so b is now greater than a positive 4. The tricky part there is that you have to flip your inequality. The next one we have b minus 6 is less than negative 2. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. The 6's cancel out, and I'll get b is less than negative 2 plus 6 gives me 4. Now, if I look at that, those are not the same thing. That's b is greater than 4. That's b is less than 4. So I got to keep working. This one down here, I'm going to add 20 to both sides. The 20's cancel out, so I'll have 2b is greater than negative 12 plus 20 gives me 8. Divide out the 2, and I'll have b is greater than 4. Well, that matches this up here, so I know this is a solution, and those have the same solution. This one over here is less than 4, so I know that one can't match. So I can automatically get rid of that one. Our last problem that we got is 10 is less than negative 4 plus 4b. So I'm going to start by adding 4 to both sides. Those will cancel. So I'll have 14 is less than 4b. Divide out the 4. 14 divided by 4 reduces to 7 over 2 is less than b. Well, that's not even close to 4, so I know that can't be an answer. So I can get rid of that one as well. Alrighty. So if you have questions about those, please make sure you're asking. We're going to keep reviewing this for a little bit longer. Okay, so please make sure you're asking your questions if you have them.